What's up, guys? This is former WCW wrestling star Glacier. Make sure to tune in to Chat, Grapple, and Cheap Pops with my buddies JB and Chris. So make sure to tune in whenever you can, or else blood may run cold on you.
Hey, what is up, wrestling friends and family? It is me, JB, and welcome to another killer edition of Chat, Grapple, and Cheap Pops with me, JB. And let's introduce him this time. It is the best Finn in all of wrestling podcasts, Mr. Finn Martin. How are you, sir?
Oh, I'm tremendous. Thanks for having me on. This is my first video recording in a very long time. So I apologize if the lighting is not fabulous, but hopefully I will be.
Let's hope so. It is an absolute thrill to have you on. We can't be more thankful. Just a quick one to the listeners and the viewers. Chris is ill, so he's not going to be with us today. So it's just myself and Finn chatting about the world of wrestling. For those that don't know, you might already know, Finn is the former editor of Power Slam magazine. I mean, most people my age probably would have seen it at least once. Wrestling fans anyway.
How old are you, JB? Or do you not like talking about your
That's not a problem. I am 36 years old. It is. I remember picking up my first issue of Power Slam, issue 49, and I believe Ken Shamrock was on the cover.
I'm right with the little supplement.
It might have been.
Yeah, did do, and that featured coverage of King of the Ring '98. King of the Ring.
Yeah, so your memory's perfect as well. So what's going on? What have you been up to lately? I know you've got the Power Slam podcast as well. What's new, Finn?
Yeah, well, I work with Inside the Ropes. We're doing podcasts with Kenny for over 6 years now. So we do like 3 podcasts a week. I'm involved with Inside the Ropes magazine. Here's the latest issue, which goes on sale in the shops tomorrow, Thursday, August 31st. So I'm involved with that. I'm doing a few other things which I'd rather not talk about, wrestling related, because they haven't been announced yet, and I'm not exactly sure when they're going to be released. And I've made promises about things in the past which I haven't kept, so I'm very mindful not to do that again.
Course, yeah.
And so yeah, that keeps me busy, really. That keeps me busy. And we were talking about this before we started recording. Just watching the wrestling, that takes up quite a lot of time, as people know.
Wrestling at the moment can be very time consuming. There is countless hours on a week, and that's if you don't watch things like Impact and NWA and everything else that's around the main 2 promotions that are currently on at the minute. Did you go to Wembley?
I did not. No, I did not go to Wembley. I watched the show on Monday, but I wasn't there. I went to Clash at the Castle last year, and I enjoyed the show. But I mean, it was, it's an expensive business going to these events, and sometimes they're more enjoyable to watch them on pay-per-view or on the network, and that's just the way it is. I mean, I remember we went to Clash of the Castle, and we got seats, then we got upgraded to better seats. It's a long story, I won't bore you with it. And the view was better than it would have been, but it still wasn't very good. And then I reviewed Clash of the Castle for Inside the Ropes magazine, and basically just had to review it as though I hadn't attended the show. I reviewed it from the WWE Network perspective. I was looking back and thinking, why did I bother going to the show? I actually had a great time socially, met up with a lot of people there, actually met up with some former Power Slam readers who I'd never met before, whose names I recognized, and that was really enjoyable. So the whole social aspect was terrific, and I'm glad I went, and would not have not gone in hindsight. But the actual experience in the arena, the big arena experience of watching the show, I didn't think was very good. So I'm in no mad rush to watch another wrestling event in a giant stadium. Did you go? Were you there?
Yes, we went to Wembley. It was something. It was spectacular. It had its great moments. It had its incredible moments. It also had its other moments. Like I think Stadium Stampede was. It came across. It might have come across really well on TV, but it didn't in the arena. In the stadium.
Yeah,
there was too much going on. Too much like that you didn't see, and it was just one of those things you would have. I still haven't watched it back. I will have at some point, but I would have preferred to watch like a Stadium Stampede or one of those matches where they just disappear. A lot of people disappear. Yeah, just to watch it on the TV. But
yeah, I mean, that's how it was, watching it on, the TV. They went to a split screen a number of times, but there was so many things going on simultaneously that it was almost impossible for it to be a good TV event as a match. And I understand that that's what people expect from these matches: chaos and constant movement, constant motion, and people falling through tables, and lots of blood and objects and weapons, etc., etc. But I think it needs to be organized chaos rather than chaotic chaos. And that's what Stadium Stampede was to me, was very, very difficult to follow, even on pay-per-view.
You almost had to, you couldn't divide your eyes to each spot. The timing just seemed a little bit weird. Like, something was happening, and then before you could finish that sequence, like the next part was already, someone was already on the top rope about to suplex someone else. It was like, give us a minute. Like,
I mean, Claudio was doing the giant swing and people were counting along, and then somebody was getting thrown on Lego at ringside and the announcers didn't even call it, and then something else was happening simultaneously, and you're like, it's like, slow down. I mean, you're doing these big spots which are probably quite painful to take and which are supposed to add to the match, really leave an impression, and they've just got lost in this, sensory overload. And that was very much the impression I took from watching that match, and I wasn't there. So I can imagine it was, the whole thing was just like incomprehensible. It was just this, it was just all these things going on at once, and how could you possibly keep up with it all?
As a spectacle itself, the show was incredible. Like, there's no way to take anything away from it. It was an excellent show. It had a lot of things going on. It had a lot of, those big moments, those highs, the fireworks and everything. It was just a massive show, and very different to Money in the Bank, which was last month before, because we were at Money in the Bank as well. And
wow. How much were the tickets for Money in the Bank? How much did you pay?
Money in the Bank tickets were, that's a good question. I think looking about 60 quid each.
60 quid. How much for the tickets?
It was two shows, wasn't it? Sorry, yeah. So we got the double deal. So
okay.
I think it was about 110 for the two nights.
Yeah, I mean, the O2 is a really good venue to see. I saw Metallica there back in 2009, and like the band were right in the middle, just where the ring was. So, I mean, everybody's in a fairly good spot in the O2. It's almost set up like MSG, isn't it? It's like almost like an oval, I guess, would it be? Or it's not circular, is it? More like oval shaped?
Yeah, it's not quite the circle, but you're right about the O2. It has excellent sort of viewpoints.
Excellent sightlines, Whereas, with the Wembley Stadium, it's a much bigger, obviously, it's 4 times the size or whatever, or even bigger, maybe nearly 5 times the size.
And our Wembley tickets were more expensive.
Were they?
Yeah, for the one night. And I'll be honest, the seats that we had were a little bit off to the if you were looking at the stage and the entrance, it was off to the right of that. Like, so you could only see the sort of the back of it. You couldn't see the entranceway really, like where they would come out. We didn't know that they had that video sort of staging bit, like almost like some of the boxing entrances.
Okay.
Where they have those big screens, like as they're walking out. It looks pretty good. But
so could you see the Hook and Jack Perry scrap on the limousine? Could you see that?
No, I had to watch it on the screen, like above the ring.
Right.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm not knocking it. It was for the price. I don't think we got I don't think the pricing was perfect.
Right. Okay.
For Wembley Stadium.
Right.
And to begin with, the seats that we paid £80 for were in the gods.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, it was only after 1 or 2 complaints that we got moved to the lower tier, because they dropped the price in those upper tier seats to like £30.
Okay.
And to the point where I think the day of the show, or the day of the show, those tickets were going for like £3.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I did read about that, and the thing is, what it's like, because it's so tribal with AEW.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misinformation out there about the company, and I was thinking, and I read that, I was like, wow, is that somebody being malicious, or is that really true? That
No, it was true. We did look it up, and it was one of those things where, as a group, we think maybe we should have waited for our tickets instead of getting pre-sale. Like we could have got some. Like a friend of mine got a floor seat for £50. Like it was,
wow.
yeah.
But that's that's the same sort of mindset of, do you buy your turkey for Christmas 3 days in advance, or do you go down to Marks and Spencer's or another, supermarket on the morning or afternoon of Christmas Eve and get one of those knockdown priced turkeys? Because there may not be any. There may be some and there may not. So, you take chances, don't you? And often, if you're going to make a long trip and there's a few of you, you want to know that you've got seats, you want to know you're going to get in, and you want to know where you are so you can prepare accordingly, don't you? So, well, actually, and prepare your expectations accordingly. I mean, that's another big part of it, isn't it?
You enjoyed the show? You enjoyed a All In?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, I watched the show. I did a big review of it that took about 45 minutes for Inside the Ropes this week. Actually, yesterday it would have been. So, I mean, I don't think I could summarize in just a few minutes my feelings on the All In show. So, actually, my feelings summarized on it All In are, I'm really pleased that they drew such a big crowd. I think it was an amazing achievement that they drew 81,000 fans. I think the fact that they're coming back next year is really good for wrestling in this country and wrestling fans. I think this is going to provoke a reaction from WWE. I'm still trying to, process the whole John Cena appearance at Money in the Bank with Grayson Waller, where he's there pleading with management to bring WrestleMania to London. And, Vince McMahon's had this long-standing policy of you don't tease something unless you're going to deliver it. But as we know with WrestleMania in America, cities bid for it. They pay WWE a lot of money just to host that event, because now it's a 2-night event and it brings tens of millions of dollars to the local economy. I don't think London would bid for WrestleMania because London doesn't have to. London gets huge events all the time. So, is WWE going to bring WrestleMania to London? I think there's actually now a good chance they will, based upon AEW's amazing performance at Wembley Stadium. I think they will want to bring WrestleMania here so they can sell out Wembley 2 nights on the trot, 2 consecutive sellouts, just to really show, really just to put AEW in the shade, just to outshine them. But my overall view on All In was it was a fabulous, amazing success for the company and for wrestling in this country. And that's I think I'd rather just leave it at that than go through every match again or review
of course.
All In again, because I just did that yesterday for about 45 minutes for Inside the Ropes.
We were on our way home from Wembley Stadium. You queue up your social media sites, and it was a bit disappointing to see that the only thing people were talking about was CM Punk and Jack Perry. I mean, we're all talking about what matches we enjoyed and how good it was and stuff, and then you queue it up and go, okay, never mind. CM Punk and Jack Perry have had some sort of altercation. It's been reported by everybody.
Yeah.
Here we go again.
Here we go again. Yeah, here we go again. And, we'd heard the stories, what was it, 10, 11 days ago, the backstage at Collision, Perry wanted to use real glass in an angle, and some of the agents said, no, you can't. And Perry was like, well, I'm going to. And then, this information was transmitted to Punk, who came along and had to step in. Quite why he had to step in as a wrestler, okay, a senior wrestler, but quite why a wrestler would have to step in, to try and reason with a wrestler further down the pecking order is, just another illustration of the chaos backstage at AEW. I mean, everyone knew that Perry and Punk were at odds. There was tension there. I mean, did you see Perry's appearance at that fan convention where he was asked about CM Punk returning? And, he couldn't even put on a brave face about it. And it was just, at best, apathetic, and at worst, opposed to it. This was before a crowd that, genuinely wanted to see Punk return to AEW. And you're like, yeah, all those stories we've heard about how Perry, he's associated with the elites. You know, he's taken their side in the whole mess last year. You know, so he doesn't really like Punk, and like, yeah, he's just confirmed that. And then for him to break off from his match with Hook and say, you know, see what this is here, real glass, you know, go cry me a river. And, you know, and then there was, of course, Punk was going to confront him backstage. You know, it would be nice to believe that Punk would rise above it, but we know how he is. We know what his temperament is.
It almost feels like he's got to protect his own reputation on this one.
Of course it is. It's almost like an old gunslinger thing, isn't it? He's calling me out. You know, I'm going to lose face if I don't confront him over this. You know, very much, you know, the same principle as why the Elite confronted Punk after he buried them last year at the media scrum.
Yeah.
I understand why they did that, and they had to do that. It's almost like a, you know, like a you know, hard man mob mentality, you know, prison type thing.
It's Phil Mitchell, isn't it?
Yeah, if you back down, then everyone will walk all over you. It's that mentality. And I absolutely understand why these things happen. But for Perry to do that, you know, on the pre-show on 0 Hour, I mean, and just break off from the match, and he was doing it deliberately to provoke and to antagonize, to bedevil Punk, and of course it did, and that led to a situation. And now we've heard these stories that Punk was having a go at Tony Khan, and Samoa Joe had to step in. And I mean, but the discipline is, the problems from last year have never been resolved, have they?
No,
it's, you know, there's tension there, and all it takes, you know, is, you know, one small incident for it all to kick off again. We know how it's going to end. This is going to end badly. I imagine that Punk at some point will leave again, and that'll be it. But he's still there for now. You know,
yeah.
even the suspension, right? Pending an investigation. I mean, to me, it seems pretty outrageous that he's been suspended.
It kills All Out, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. And also, Perry, we saw he did it on TV. This isn't a backstage confrontation that, you know, he said, see, you know, this person said that he, you know, according to these sources backstage, this person started it. No, according to these people backstage, the other person started it. We know who started this. It was Jack Perry on TV. We all saw it. When you don't have discipline backstage at wrestling shows, these things happen. It's just that simple.
I mean, I feel for the people that have bought tickets to All Out in a way, like, because if CM Punk is suspended more than 6 days,
yeah,
which is possible, the people in Chicago that have bought those tickets to see Punk because he is the hometown guy, it's I mean, I thought having All Out 1 week after All In was a bit weird and a little bit of a mess, but they've gone for it, and you know, they roll with it, and now they've lost one of their top 2 headliners.
Yeah. Well, the main guy for that show in that market, undoubtedly. And I mean, it's possible that they can resolve it, and he can appear on Collision this Saturday, and he'll be at the show on Sunday. I mean, if I was Tony Khan, it seems pretty open and shut to me. And mind you, you know, how far did Punk push it backstage? Did he overreact? You know, was he really obnoxious to Tony Khan? And if he was, then, you know, Tony looks weak now. And if he just bends and buckles and just brings him back too quickly, you know, his respect rating is going to fall even further. So there is that to consider as well. It's, you know, I mean, obviously it's a bad situation, but all of this could have been avoided with a strong management and instilling discipline and letting everyone know that this kind of behavior will not be tolerated. You know, when Perry went off in the first place about using real glass, I mean, someone should have had a conversation with him and said this kind of behavior will not be tolerated backstage. You know, and if you're going to behave like this, there's no place for you in AEW. It's that simple, isn't it, really?
Yeah, there seems to be a real lack of discipline amongst certain sort of wrestlers and stuff. Because some of them do get sent home, but some don't.
Yeah, that's it. But I mean, it's difficult being tough. I mean, no one likes being the bad guy. You know, I mean, I've had to be a bad guy many times when I was running Power Slam and having to, you know, have unpleasant conversations with people. And when you're the boss, that's what you've got to do. You know, it's not easy, you know, being in charge. And anyone, you know, who's ever been a manager or, team leader or, in charge of anything where they've had to like discipline people or suspend them or fire them or give them bad news. Anyone who's been in that position will know this. And it's very difficult, and it involves making difficult decisions. And if you're running a wrestling company, there's a lot of egos involved, obviously. There's a lot of bravado and people, puffing themselves up and acting like the hard men, even though, they're in a, essentially a make-believe world. And you've got to be a tough leader. You've got to be strong, and you've got to let, your locker room know that you're in charge, not them.
Is this your way? Is this your way of saying you don't fancy being the Bill Watts of AEW then?
No, but the thing is, right, you're obviously aware of the Click back in '95 in WWF, right?
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels, Diesel, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, 1, 2, 3 Kid, Razor Ramon. And they, for a while, basically ran WWF. And, Vince was weak at the time because his company was, losing money, and he was really struggling. And there was this effectively like a mini union of guys who were pretty much, running the company. And I remember doing interviews with lots of people, or reading interviews with lots of promoters as well, who had essentially said, this is ridiculous. This is absurd that Vince has allowed himself, to be subservient to his talent, who are basically telling him who's going to win which belt, who's going to be pushed, who's going to be booked. And it was a really tough spot for Vince there. And obviously he got through it, and Diesel and Razor went to WCW in 1996, and things changed, and the click were no more. But for a time there, Vince was almost in this Tony Khan's type situation where he wasn't really in charge. And I remember back then, people were like, I can't believe that Vince McMahon, the guy who created WrestleMania, the guy who took on the establishment and the NWA, the guy who, destroyed, the territory promoters, has put himself in this position where his talent is telling him what to do. And this is effectively where Tony Khan is now, in a different way, of course, but still people don't respect him and don't feel like he's in charge. People think it's the talent who's in charge. And that's no way to run a wrestling company.
I'll be honest with you, you're the first person I've seen on any site or any social media or anyone that's talking to us, like, you're the first person to make that comparison of the Click and AEW, and I think that's brilliant. Like, I don't know why no one would have even would have seen that and thought of that already, but you've obviously got that one, and man, that's a really good, it's up
and
there.
It's right, and it's right. I mean, I remember I did a very famous interview with Shane Douglas.
Shane hated the Click, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right. And it's in the Power Slam Interviews Volume 1. And it went out in issue 20 of Power Slam. And it was the best interview I'd ever done at that point. I'd already done some pretty big interviews. And, this was a very different time, early 1996, where kayfabe was still a thing. And we managed to do this really hard-hitting interview in which, Shane Douglas, Troy Martin, had talked about his miserable experience as Dean Douglas in WWF, and just how he felt it was the Click, and particularly Razor Ramon, that was somebody personally really didn't like there, had conspired to just wreck his chances. Now, a lot of people have since said, no, he's been discredited. He was a complete flop there, which he was. He just didn't fit in. He didn't try and blah, blah, all these different reasons why he didn't make it there. And they tried to put the blame on Dean Douglas, Shane Douglas. And he absolutely didn't perform in that role. So he does deserve some of the blame for the failure of that character in WWF in 1995, no doubt. But I also believe that, they weren't really helpful. Sean and Razor and others, I don't think they were really working backstage to make him look good. And I think there was certainly resistance to trying to get this guy over. I think everyone involved was to blame, but what you had there was machinery that wasn't functioning and running as it should have done, which is to try and get everyone over, especially when a company like WWF, which was really struggling in 95. Hogan, of course, was in WCW at that point. So WCW was doing better. Nitro would be launched that year, and that would change everything. But I mean, you've got to work together for the good of and the betterment of the team. That's how it all works. You know, that's how every business functions and succeeds. And if you've got people, you know, under your own roof who are seeking to sabotage other talents to preserve their spots, then you've got a big problem. And if you've got a manager or boss or head booker or whatever, promoter, who's not stamping that out and getting people together and saying, listen, you know, we're all on the same team here, we're all working towards the same goal, then, you know, you're not as effective and successful and efficient as you should be. So, you know, you just, instead of, you know, working together to make things better, you acting backstage, you're putting fires out, you know, you're dealing with problems all the time. And it leads to very poor morale. Morale was terrible in WWF in 1995, partly because the money was so bad, but partly because people felt like the Clique was running the show, and that it was very difficult to get over unless you were in with the Clique. And, you know, you just had that sort of almost two-tier system there, and, you know, just all these, you know, people who just felt like, you know, they weren't being used to the best of their abilities because other people were conspiring to, you know, hold them back or hold them down. So I think it is a valid comparison. It is different, but there is similarities.
The Clique weren't EVPs, were they?
Yeah, there's similarities there.
Yeah, the Clique weren't officially titled executive vice presidents of the company.
No, but they might as well have been.
Yeah.
But that interview was like, I remember I can still remember doing the interview and thinking, I can't believe he's telling me all this. Wow, you know, it's like,
did you ever feel like at that time that some of the stuff they were telling you was not necessarily printable?
No, I think it all was. I mean, I remember there was a couple of things he said in the interview, Shane Douglas, where other people backstage had told him things that the Clique had said about him, and things that they were seeking to do to basically, you know, ruin Douglas's career. And he made a point of saying to me, Finlay, you know, don't print this guy's name because he's still working there. You know, this interview, I think we did it in February. It was either January or February of 96. So the Clique didn't officially disband until, I think it was May, or was it late April? When was the curtain call? I think was it late April?
I think it was like that that April, May.
Yeah, sort of late April. Yeah, late April 1996, the famous MSG curtain call. Yeah. And that was the end of it. So the Clique was still, you know, running basically, you know, still a lot of power when this interview took place. So he made a point of saying, please don't print this person's name. I think the person's name was actually Savio Vega, who had like alerted him to all the things that the Clique were doing to, you know, just make his life a misery. And there was other things as well. He said that he just said, please don't print that. And of course you respect that because, you know, you want to have a relationship with his talent. You want to do an interview with him again one day. And, you know, and that's just a, you know, I don't consider myself to be a journalist, but some of what I do is journalism, I guess. But that is a journalistic principle that you protect your sources, or you know, observe the wishes of your sources, so those people will continue to communicate and speak to you and pass information to you, or whatever, you know.
We've had that in interviews ourselves, where there are some bits that we've had to clip and cut because they've said, "Okay, no, you can't use that." Like, you know, please don't. You know, that's between us. You know, and it's like that's fine. Like, we're happy to, of course, do that. Like, it's well, absolutely, because it means, especially in a podcast format, you know, people can just end up saying stuff that like, oh dear, you know, that could be, you know, could get sued for that, or maybe that's not true, or maybe my recollections vary. That's the phrase, isn't it? Recollections may vary. I think that was the phrase that the Palace used, didn't they, regarding a certain couple when they put out did some interviews with a certain
Woman in America. Recollections may vary.
Yeah, it also seems very helpful when people put the word allegedly in front of everything.
Yes, of course.
How does the bloodline end?
How does the bloodline end? Well, presumably it's going to be Roman Reigns, Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. Right now, I thought Cody was going to win this year at WrestleMania, and I think
we all did.
Yeah, I think probably eight or maybe even 9 out of 10 people thought that also. So it looks like it's going to be Cody versus Reigns, in 2024 in Philadelphia, and presumably that's when Cody wins the belt. He can't fail again, can he? They can't allow him to fail again.
I think you'd lose every ounce of momentum with Cody if he gets beaten again in the biggest sort of situation of his career. I was surprised that they rolled with Roman at this year's WrestleMania, but it made sense. There's still more story to be had. I'm not sure how much more is left. With Jay
I'm
and
with
Jimmy
you there. Yeah, I mean, it's like, presumably Jimmy's going to be on SmackDown this week. I mean, that was delayed for obvious reasons.
Yeah,
due to Bray Wyatt sadly passing away. So he'll be on SmackDown this Friday, I imagine. Well, I think they've announced that he's going to be on SmackDown this Friday. So I'm curious to see what he says and how this storyline is furthered. I don't think we've heard from Jay since he quit, which will be, what will that be, 2 weeks ago now? I think 2 weeks ago. Yeah, it was the summer. It was the SmackDown after SummerSlam, wasn't it? When he quit on TV. So, I mean, Jay, to me, I'd love to see him turn up in Impact or turn up, on loan from WWE. Of course, he's still under contract. We know he's going to return. But I'd like to see him really sell his storyline by having him appear in other places. So we got Jay, Jimmy. They've said they want a match at WrestleMania, but they can't spin it out until then. I mean, we're still in August, So, I think it's going to be Reigns versus Cody. I think Reigns will then turn babyface after he loses the belt. I think that's the right direction for him. I don't think he'll need to really change his character very much at all to be, epically over as a face. I am disappointed that Brock Lesnar has not got involved in this tale. I thought he would. There'll be like an uneasy alliance between Lesnar and Reigns. If you remember after WrestleMania, when Lesnar did the attack on Cody, Paul Heyman made a point of saying, I knew nothing about that at all, in a way to let us know that he obviously did know. So I thought, is this the start of Lesnar becoming like a member or an affiliate or an associate of the bloodline? And I just think that would have been incredible. Reigns there, Reigns and Lesnar obviously had all their battles last year. And, this is a guy that Reigns is really afraid of because even though he just lost to Cody at SummerSlam and lost to Reigns last year, everyone respects Brock Lesnar. Everyone knows what he's done and what he can do. And I think Heyman would have been dynamite in that situation, just working with them, like he was. Remember when we thought that, Heyman got beaten up by Reigns and Reigns didn't trust him because he thought that Heyman was affiliated with Lesnar and we were secretly working with Lesnar and working against the bloodline. And you could have like a version of that story, but it would have been different. And enough time has elapsed now that I think that would have been, fresh again and novel. And, these guys are talented enough that they could make it work. So I think there was a ton of mileage in a Reigns and Lesnar team, with them not trusting each other. They could have done Reigns and Lesnar versus Jimmy and Jay, Reigns and Lesnar versus Cody and Seth. I mean, these would have been colossal matches. So that's, I'm feeling really kind of shortchanged that this hasn't happened. But part of the reason for that is I built this up so much in my mind that it was going to happen. We, as armchair bookers, we do this. And I remember, this is going to happen for sure. And then it didn't happen. And you feel like such an idiot when you make these predictions and things don't, pan out, which, is part of the job. But yeah, I like it seemed that Lesnar turned face after the loss to Cody at SummerSlam. I mean, I could turn heel again, but I don't think we're going to see Lesnar for a little while. Probably not until the next Saudi show. So,
Saudi show or possibly a Royal Rumble or something.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. How do you think it's going to end?
I feel like Cody will be the one to win the belt, and then I think Solo will turn on Roman, which brings about Roman's babyface turn, and then Roman puts Solo on the way out. I think Roman's looking to slow things down, and I mean, you can't really go much slower than the way Roman does things at the minute, but
No.
Solo will be. It feels like they're building very slowly. You know, it's those little subtle touches where he bumps into Solo by mistake, and and the shooting of the daggers with the eyes and stuff. I feel like Solo's going to be the one, unless you get something else in the in between, like someone else pops up and it becomes the guy to go with. But it feels like Solo could be the one.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, I don't know whether we're going to get this appearance by The Rock. I don't want to see Rock wrestle, but
I think that time might have been and gone as well. The chance for that.
Yeah, but I think I'd like to see a confrontation between those two, between Roman and Rock. I think that could be special. I guess the danger of doing that is that it's that, well, you've dropped the hints now that this is going to happen, and then people will want that more than what they actually present. Yeah. So if they don't give us that, I will understand why. Again, that whole thing of like I was saying earlier about Cena and saying, oh, WrestleMania needs to come to London. Don't hint or suggest or tease something that you're not going to deliver. And that's a WWE, long-standing WWE policy. We don't do that because it's bad for business, and it means that people are then disappointed by what we do give them, because they want the thing that we've just hinted that we might give them, even though we never had any intention of doing so.
I mean, he had the arena shaking at that point. It was quite a noise, like in my ears, especially when I was standing there. Like, one, we didn't expect to see John Cena in the first place. Then he drops a line like that, and you're like, hang on a minute, surely not. Surely they're not thinking about this. And maybe they are, maybe they're not, maybe they weren't. Like,
I think they are. I think this is Vince's territory. It's been Vince's territory since 1989, right? And like AEW has muscled in with this mega show at Wembley. And I think, Vince and the rest of the gang, their egos are bruised right now. Maybe maybe worse than bruised. Maybe the egos are in plaster casts. And I think they're going to want to come back swinging to reassert their authority. That's my prediction. So I think this WrestleMania, I don't know, because for all the reasons I've already explained, it does seem in a sense like a long shot that they would do it. But if they were to announce WrestleMania in 2025, 2 nights in London, they're back on top, because they'll sell out Wembley 2 nights running for that, because people are flying from all over the world.
No doubt.
But just like lots of people flew in actually for All In, didn't they?
Well, there was someone I knew, like their brother had flown in from Dallas.
Wow.
To watch AEW, and then flew back like the next day.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like,
it is, yeah. But a lot of people are in love with AEW. So you'll do these things for love.
Now you were writing in the glory days of the Monday Night Wars and WCW and WWF. How does it differ, the WWE and AEW battle, as opposed to the WCW one?
Well, I mean, basically, there's no AEW's not on the same night as WWE. They're on different nights, and WWE is drawing loads more viewers. So, there's not really any comparison, in my opinion.
But WCW never had the nuts to, for lack of a better word, the nuts to try and do a Wembley show or a
no, of course
stadium.
They didn't. No, of course they didn't. No, you're right. And I'm sure WWE is saying, well, a lot of the people there are fans because of us, and that's absolutely right. Lots of people who were in Wembley because they're fans of WWE. I know some people who went to that show because it was AEW's first show in the country. It was at Wembley, which was a draw in itself, because it was a novelty of seeing wrestling show at this giant stadium. I know a lot of people who, well, not a lot of people, I know a few people who went to that show who don't even really watch AEW. In fact, don't even really keep up with wrestling anymore, but went along for the social aspect and because they thought it'd be fun. So I'm sure WWE is smarting and thinking, well, a lot of those fans are ours. We created those fans, and they did. That's absolutely true. So I don't think there's really any similarities between what went on between, 95 and really sort of, what was it, mid-98. I guess you had like nearly 3 years where it was competitive. And what's going on now? Because WCW for a time was the number one company in the States. And AEW is not the number one company in the States. And I don't think it will be. I think it's basically gone as far as it's going to go in terms of viewership now. And you know what? That's not a knock on them. That's not to belittle them. No one's belittling AEW after what they just did on Sunday. But it's just the reality of where they're at. They're hitting, 800, high 800,000s for Dynamite now. What did Collision do Saturday? What was Collision's number? Did you see Collision?
556 or something like that. It was, yeah.
Right. Well, they're doing between 450 and nearly 600,000 viewers on Saturday. I know it's a different time now and it's harder to draw ratings or, viewing figures because it's just a different time and there's more entertainment options and it's just it's no one's going to draw 5 million viewers on a Monday or Wednesday or Friday, and certainly not a Saturday anymore. It's just not going to happen in 2023. But I don't think, there's really a battle there. If Tony Khan said, right, I'm going to put Dynamite on Monday nights head-to-head with Raw, I'm going to put it on Friday nights head-to-head with SmackDown, it's a different conversation. But that's not going to happen because he knows what would happen if he did put his show up against WWE's show.
MJF, stick or twist in 2024?
What do you think what you mean? Is he
Stay,
going to stay
yeah,
where he
stay
is,
or go, yeah. What would you...
I think he's going to stay. I think he's going to stay in AEW.
I felt that after watching the Wembley show. I felt like he's in the perfect place. He's the king of the mountain right now. And that's not a slight on Jeff Jarrett, but he's the top guy. There's not many times in a main event of a massive show people are cheering for the champion to keep his title. You just don't, it's not something that I've seen when I've been to shows. Like they want a title change, they want that big moment, and people were solidly behind Maxwell at this show. I think his maybe his smartest move, and I've never said this before, I think maybe his smartest move would be to stay where he is. I
agree, absolutely agree. Yeah, that's what he should do, and that's what I believe he will do. He's got a great gig there. He knows the people he's working with and working for. He doesn't appear to have any heat with anyone. He's keeping a safe distance from all this aggro backstage. He's smart enough, I'm sure, to see what's going on and not get involved on any level. If Punk returns, which I think he will, it's going to be presumably Punk MJF maybe in November pay-per-view. And I'm curious to see who wins that. I would think it would probably be MJF, certainly if he's re-signed by then. But yeah, Tony Khan's going to pay him a lot of money to stay. He's still only, 27, I think he is. If he signs a 3-year deal, he'll only be 30 when this expires. That's still young enough for WWE to invest in him long term. He's got a really light schedule in AEW. I know he's been wrestling more recently than he did earlier in the year. But he's got a really good thing going there. And yeah, there's no way he's leaving. Just no chance.
It's a perfect way to show how valuable you are when others around you are causing all sorts of trouble and strife.
Exactly.
Keeping your head down and getting on with it. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. He's like bringing this sense of calm, and professionalism. That's the word.
We were expecting Punk to come out at the end of the Wembley show and with the real world. So every time I hear that, I hear Ric Flair say it, the real world championship, and them to have that face-off stare down. But it obviously never materialized, and doubt it was even in the plans. But
well, I mean, obviously MJF and Cole story is still ongoing, isn't it? So you know, lots of people will be tuning in tonight to see what happens next. Is there going to be a rematch this Sunday? Are they going to defend the Ring of Honor tag team belts? You know, is there going to be Cole and Roderick Strong going to team up and turn heel on proper on MJF? Well, Strong's already heel, but Cole turning heel proper on MJF. So this could go in many different directions. Yeah, MJF's doing really well right now, and you know, he's the center of attention. You know, you can see he's really comfortable there. That's a word you don't hear that often from wrestling commentators. Comfortable. And in some ways, you know, the comfort zone, enemy of all promise and all that, and getting too comfortable in anything in life, I think can prevent you from reaching your true potential and fulfilling your aspirations. If you get too comfy, because you should always be, you know, you should always be that little element of danger and the unknown there, because that's going to push you to be better and to do more and maybe experiment and take chances you otherwise wouldn't. But you know, I don't sense any sort of, I don't sense with MJF that he's taking his foot off the accelerator pedal. On the contrary, I think he's really just pushing it, and you know, he's taking this Adam Cole storyline much further, I think, than any of us thought he was going to go. So I don't think he's going to leave this company. Why would he? And there's a lot of mileage in it left yet. And why rush the Punk thing? I mean, we might be saying, yes, well, we need to do the Punk thing now because he's going to get fired. Well, maybe that's a reason to rush the Punk thing. You know,
someone messaged us.
Get the Punk thing get the show on the road with the Punk thing, because he might not be around much longer.
Well, someone messaged us and said that Punk is in trouble again because he wants to main event WrestleMania Night 1. I mean, how that works, I don't know, but I mean, that would have to be a firing and all sorts of craziness. But
what is that? Is that something that's just come out?
No, it's something that we got a message. This must have been Monday even. Got a message on Monday saying that CM Punk, like, I think it was more in jest, but saying that CM Punk's causing more problems so he can wrestle. He can finally main event a WrestleMania.
Well, there was that story that came out with, was it Fightful, saying that he says he's miserable there, and then he appeared at the Cauliflower Rally Club event, didn't he, this week? He was pictured with JBL and Ron Simmons. Did you see that photo?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I'm sure he was at the CAC this week, and he appeared at that. You know, and always, you know, Punk and Layfield, I think, had, you know, I think there was a few problems between them back in the 2000s when Punk first arrived in WWE. And I bet they've now got this real sort of affinity as these veterans.
Little kinship, I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to be like, yeah, I understand now, you know, so.
Well, I saw the picture of Punk taking the Underground to his hotel. That's
oh, right, yeah, I saw that one.
I mean, how much of a mix-up is that, or is that by design?
I mean, the mind boggles, doesn't it? I mean, some people say that's not true. I mean, but it seems genuine to me, the photo. And he's there, he's got his bag, and he's got his, you know, his little like bum bag over his front, which no doubt he's got his money and his, you know, passport in and everything, and all his valuables. And I believe some fans had to direct him because, you know, what the Underground's like, if you're not familiar with it, can be quite a daunting prospect getting on the Underground. And I imagine it's many years since he was in London. He has wrestled there before, but not for many, many years. So yeah, it's hard to believe that something like that could happen. But then again, you know, it's hard to believe, you know, that Jack Perry would stare into the camera on a pay-per-view on AEW's biggest show in its history and deliberately provoke CM Punk. So, you know, when you get yourself into the mindset that, yes, that's possible, then almost anything's possible, isn't it?
I mean, it's an odd one. I mean, could Perry have been disillusioned with his position on the show? Do you think he felt maybe he could have been higher up the card, something like that, and he's like looking to create a stir about himself? And
well, maybe, but
I mean, it's
not unheard
of,
it's
is
totally
it?
Unprofessional. No. I said on the podcast with Kenny this week for Insider Ups, it's a sacking offence. Should have just been fired immediately after that. If I was in charge of AEW, he would not be working there any longer. He would be fired.
Firing him would only make him very valuable elsewhere, wouldn't it?
Well, but who cares? I mean, who's Jack Perry? I mean, okay, he's made a little bit of progress as a heel. He's done all right, but after he turned heel, he was really stumbled those first few weeks. I think he's finding his feet and he's sort of getting there as a heel. But what the message is sent is the important one, is that we are not tolerating people stepping out of line, and there will be discipline in this company. And if anyone crosses the line and goes into business for himself, which is precisely what he did, they will be fired. And it will immediately send a message to the locker room that this kind of behavior will not be tolerated. So yes, sack him. That's what I say. Just get rid of him. I mean,
Okay.
you can't act like that. You can't. To me,
we've spoken many times on this show about the lack of discipline and how it maybe Tony needs to be less of a mate and more of a boss. And
well, exactly.
Yeah, and
absolutely right. And I mean, I was absolutely outraged when he did what he did on that show. I just thought this is just like.
Did you feel it was a massive dig when you were watching it live? Because we didn't see him, we didn't see that bit again on the screen. Like we didn't see it. Like
it was just him going into. It was him like it was like school playground level antics, and it was just like, why are you doing this? And just think of the pecking order. I mean, Jack Perry's like a second, third match guy. CM Punk's the main event guy. I mean, can you imagine, like, a third match guy doing this to Hulk Hogan in 1988? They wouldn't be booked again.
I think someone did. I think Raj Giri said it was like Val Venus doing something to Steve Austin in '98.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
And
absolutely,
it absolutely wouldn't have been tolerated.
It would be. That's it. He would be told, you're suspended, and we'll make a decision about your future, and that decision will be you're not working here anymore.
Do you think Perry would be back?
Oh, I don't know. Probably. I mean, I think it's a shame for him in a sense, because I think, he has made a little bit of progress lately as a heel. And I think he's just done himself in really with this. I think even people who don't like Punk would look at that and say there was no need for that at all. This just, as you said, instead of people talking about All In and the biggest show in the history of AEW, what's everyone talking about? This ridiculous confrontation backstage between Jack Perry and CM Punk. I mean, it's just like, it's just kind of, it hasn't spoiled the success of the show, because the show was such a huge success that in time this will pass and people will just talk about, wow, what a crowd they drew, and rightly so. But at the moment, it's what we're talking about it now. Yeah. I mean, it's just absurd. It's just.
Do you think there's a problem with people running to the sheets though about these things? So I'm pretty sure these guys.
This has always happened. This is not a new thing at all. This has always gone on.
It happens a lot with AEW though. Like it's a lot. Yeah. Like it didn't feel like it happened a lot with like WCW and stuff like that. Like back in the day, like
it did do. It happened all the time. This is just the way it is.
I feel like if for whatever reason I were Tony Khan, I'd be saying, please, like let's stop running off and telling these guys that there's a problem. It only makes us look bad.
Well, I mean, you can't do that, because then you'll be accused of being a dictator. I mean, you could say that, but you've got to say it in a polite way. I mean, you can't ban people from speaking to people in the press, because they're going to just do it anyway. This isn't North Korea, so it's going to happen. But the way you handle it is you handle it like a boss and a leader, and you listen to people, and you listen to their grievances, and you try and work with them to reach a compromise and a common goal, which is for the betterment of the company. You don't run away from a problem. You tackle it. It's like if you've got like a wound that's gone septic, you don't ignore it. You seek treatment, don't you? Otherwise, next thing you know, they'll be cutting your leg off if you don't, if you don't have it treated and sort it out. I mean, it's just one of those things. You can't flee from these problems. You know, you've got to deal with them. You've got to face them down. You've got to get people together. I mean, you know, when Punk came back, he did that big interview with, I think it was ESPN, the big famous interview he did with them. And he said that he'd reached out to Young Bucks and Hangman Adam Page and Kenny Omega, and was told by their representatives not to contact them, and they weren't going to work together. There was going to be no feud to capitalize on the events of last year, and don't contact these people again. So, I mean, you've reached a dangerous point there where, you know, the boss is not the boss. You know, Tony Khan is not in charge. These wrestlers' agents are in charge. And to me, Tony Khan, as we know, he just recently re-signed Kenny and the Bucks and Hangman Page to huge long-term contracts. I think they're all earning, most certainly the Bucks are earning 7 figures apiece. I'm sure Kenny is, not sure about Hangman. But they all signed these new deals. Now, the condition of signing the new deal, which they did after Punk had returned, should have been, we're going to get together and we're going to squash this. We're going to douse this heat. We're going to put this fire out. You know, we are going to sort this out. We're going to work together. We're going to iron out all these problems, blah, blah, blah. So we have a good working environment backstage, which is what everyone wants, right? They don't want tension when they come to work. They don't want bad morale. Otherwise, it's 1995 with a click running the show again. Or it's WCW towards the end, or it's ECW when they've run out of money. Well, I guess run out of money is a different thing. But it's like you've created a situation backstage where it's not harmonious. And I'm not saying that it would be if Tony Khan got them all into a room, but I bet it would be better than it is right now. But to me, that's what Tony Khan should have insisted. As a condition of, well, we know CM Punk's willing to work with these people because he said so. But these other guys, they don't want anything to do with it. Well, on condition of you re-signing with this company and getting these massive deals, then let's at least have a conversation with CM Punk and let's see if we can do business. You know, okay, if they can't reach a compromise, fair enough, at least we've tried. But to the best of my knowledge, they didn't even attempt it. So the fact that, you know, this was never resolved means that it was just going to fester, and that's exactly what's happening now. And we saw that on Sunday with Jack Perry, who's associate of the Elite. Perhaps he thinks he's going to be protected by those guys, and maybe he will be. You know, I don't know. But, you know, this is, we're talking about this when we should be talking about other things. And it's all down to a failure, right, to communicate. Well, not failure to communicate. Well, in a sense, a failure to communicate, because the communication's not happening between these warring factions. It's, you know, this situation that's never been dealt with. And, you know, they should be, olive branches should be getting extended. They should be burying the hatchet, smoking the peace pipe. You know, you pick your cliche, you know, pick your phrase. To me, this should have been dealt with and sorted out. You know, it's just that simple.
Well, we always felt that the money match was CM Punk and Kenny Omega.
Yeah, well,
and it's at this time, you know, the way we're talking, it's not happening. It's not going to happen anytime soon, and they're leaving, I say, relatively big money on the table, like, which is crazy in this world. But yeah, it's one thing you did say about people airing their grievances. I can only imagine Jack Perry going to Tony Khan saying, "They won't let me use real glass, Tony." Sorry, mate. Off you go. Like, what do you expect?
And then, you know, we had the real glass, and they did the Fisherman Buster spot on the car windscreen.
Yeah.
And someone was caught. And it's just like, you know, this is like an opening match, and you're doing all this stuff, you know, all these stunts on cars in the opening match. When
on the pre-show, it was the pre-show, wasn't it? Still,
yeah, exactly. We've got all these other crazy matches with all these, you know, crazy gimmick spots and props and objects and blood, etc., etc. And it's just like, well, by doing that on the pre-show, you know, you're diminishing the impact of the violent matches later on the show. So, you know, it's all about, you know, pacing and not doing too much so that your audience is totally fatigued later in the show. Happily, for AEW, this was a lively audience, and there was good enthusiasm for most of the show.
Yeah, it was a hot crowd for the most part. I mean, there was some quiet moments, but it happens everywhere. Every show gets, the quiet match, and it does happen. But yeah, this was a very, very lively crowd, and we were happy to say we're part of it. It was quite an experience. I imagine we'll be back for next year's one as well, and be interested to see what WWE have planned for 2024 as well in the UK.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I have no idea, but I imagine there'll be a reaction. I'm sure there's going to be a response, a counter attack.
What's coming up for you, Finn? What's coming up in the near future? What can we look forward to seeing from you?
Well, I'm just sticking, with Inside the Ropes magazine. We've got a big issue coming up end of September. Obviously, lots has happened recently. Most of it, or lots of it, really tragic. With Bray, and obviously Terry Funk died as well. So we've got a big issue coming up in September. Just continue to do the podcasts, and that keeps me busy. I mean, it's a full-time job keeping up with everything, and I do like Q&A for the magazine, I do the news, do a From the Top column. In the latest issue, I did the review of SummerSlam, which seems like a long time ago now, and it was actually only earlier this month, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, so much has happened since then. So I was really pleased with that. I can't tell you what I'm going to be doing in the next issue because it hasn't happened yet, and you don't want to jeopardize something before it's confirmed.
No, of course,
and done and in the can, so to speak. So the thing that hopefully will happen either this week or early next week, I'm really excited about that. But I'd love to tell you what it was, but that would end up jinxing it. It probably wouldn't occur.
We have that. We refuse to announce a guest until after the chat has happened. Otherwise, it can always fall apart. Anything, plans can change. So, of
course,
we're very much like that.
I remember issue 14 of Power Slam. I did the cover. It was actually Shawn Michaels on the cover, In Your House 2 coverage, and someone had arranged an interview for me with Raven when he was quite new in the character. Had only been around maybe about 6 months at that point in ECW.
Yeah.
So I did the cover, and Raven was there on the cover. So then I rang Raven up to do the interview, and he didn't want to talk about anything that he'd done prior to being Raven. And obviously he'd been Scotty Flamingo, Scotty the Body, Johnny Polo, Scott Anthony down in Georgia for Global. So he'd had quite a long career prior to Raven. But this was 95. Kayfabe was still with us. A lot of people who weren't following wrestling then might not realize that, but a lot of people were still kayfabe, and a lot of people were really sticking with it. And he was like, well, I'm not going to talk to you about anything that I've done prior to Raven. So we couldn't do the interview. So I ended up having to change the cover. Happily, the magazine hadn't gone to press. So I had to change the cover and remove any mention of his name on the front because there was no interview. So yes, I'm not sure if I've told that story before. Maybe I have.
Wow, okay. I mean, I'll happily take an exclusive.
Yeah, I remember speaking to him, and I was a bit, irked at first, but once he explained it, I was like, you know what? Yeah, it was a fair point, because had he, as this Raven character, started talking about being the zany Johnny Polo, in a sense you might say, well, it's not going to affect his character in ECW, but he was fully committed to that character, and he believed that character was going to be a turning point for him, which it was, and he didn't want to do anything to jeopardize it. So I absolutely respected his decision.
Okay, a couple more things before I let you go. I know I've taken up a lot of your time already. Do you miss the hotline?
What, the Power Slam hotline back in the day?
Yeah.
Well, I certainly miss the money it made. I can tell you that. it did very well for a lot of years before the internet arrived, or before, well, not before the internet arrived, before everyone had the internet. Now, I think 97 was probably the best year for the hotline. Yeah, I mean, I do. Yeah, I mean, it was actually quite a lot of pressure that. Yeah, I've got some of the scripts somewhere, because you had to do a 6-minute message, and you wanted to include as much information as possible. So you'd script it all out, every word, right? And you'd have to record it in, I think it was 5 parts. The message, I think it was like a maximum of 90 seconds or 60. I can't remember what it was, but you couldn't do like a 6-minute thing. You had to do it about 5 parts. And also talking really quickly for 6 minutes, even with a script, it's very difficult to do that and not trip over your words or get something wrong or make a mistake. So it was actually more work than you might think it was to do that hotline. But yeah, it was a really important part of the magazine. I think you've read Pro Wrestling through the Power Slam years.
Yes, I've got that. It's like I said, it's still on my phone. I don't keep many books on my phone, but that one's still there. Right,
well, that's my first book, in case you didn't know, on Amazon, and that's the history of Power Slam and Superstars of Wrestling, the magazine. That was Power Slam's forerunner, and big history. That's only a very small part, but mostly it's a history of pro wrestling between 92 and 2015. As I explained in that book, had it not been for the hotline, Power Slam would never have happened, because Superstars of Wrestling, when we took it over, Colin Bowman, my then partner, he was the editor of WCW magazine back in between 95 and 99, I think it was. And had it not been for the phone line, we would never have done the magazine. And the magazine, during the dark times of late 94, 95, 96, the hotline was basically keeping the magazine afloat, because the magazine wasn't really making much money. So yeah, I do miss it, in the sense that, it was a big part of the history of that magazine. But, and in the end, technology just moved on, the internet arrived, people didn't need to ring hotlines anymore. So it had its run, and it was good in its day. So I think the answer is yes, but in other ways, I'm also glad that I don't have to be somewhere every Tuesday and Friday and Monday morning to do a message. I can now take time off and do things, and I've got more of a flexible sort of working life than I do with the hotline, where you had to do those uploads that, on those days every week without fail.
I mean, it's different. It's going to be difficult to explain this to younger listeners or viewers, but what we essentially have here is the Mean Gene / Sean Oliver of like the mid to late 90s in youthing, because you did the hotline, which Mean Gene had his own hotline, which he was always plugging on WCW shows.
Yeah.
And you did the interviews in the magazine, which, this was before the shoot interviews, the kayfabe commentaries, all that stuff was, before all the RF video stuff that came out. We came looking to Power Slam for those interviews further. I mean, the one with Mick Foley, not long after Hell in a Cell.
That's right, issue 50.
That's an absolute classic. Yeah,
that was a really good interview. Yeah, always be grateful to Mick for making the time to speak to Power Slam there. And previously to that, we spoke in 95 after King of Death match. We think we spoke back in 94, actually, in the Dying Days of Superstars of Wrestling. I think we talked shortly after the Vader match, with him losing the ear. So yeah, Mick was always back in those days, made a lot of time for the magazine. I'll always be grateful for that.
I mean, let's wrap it, because like I said, I've taken up enough of your time already, Finn. I'm sure you've got much more pressing matters at hand.
Well, I'm all right for another 10 minutes. Let's wrap it. Let's go till 9:30. So let's go another 11 minutes. If there's anything else you want to discuss.
There's always plenty of wrestling to discuss. So we'll be staying up to watch Dynamite tonight.
Me?
Yeah.
No.
Same.
No chance. No way. No, I mean, I haven't, back in the day, I didn't used to stay up and watch the shows, because it was just exhausting. and I was working long hours back in the Power Slam days, and I think I stayed up to watch, I think, Royal Rumble 95 and 96 and fell asleep during it. And but it's not something I've ever done. Sorry, I'm 53 and been doing this a long time, but staying up late to watch. Oh no, I watched Royal Rumble. I tell you what, I went up to Glasgow and with the Inside the Ropes people, I watched Royal Rumble 2018 and Royal Rumble 2020. So I did watch those live with other people. So, but I think those were the last two shows that I watched live.
We only really stay up for WrestleMania now. Like it's the
right.
one, yeah, it's the one that you can, you can sort of like make a block for 2 nights, and then and with NXT on the day as well, it's just there's so much to get through in like.
Yeah, I mean the long
short.
shot.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not too bad now. WrestleMania's over 2 nights, but I mean that last time, was it 2019? Was the last time they did it over 1 night? Yeah, was it 2018 with Becky? No, 2019, wasn't it? Becky Lynch and Ronda and Charlotte were in the main event, weren't it, in 2019? So, but was that like over 7 hours? I think the show that night was something unbelievable, wasn't it?
With a pre-show, I imagine. Yeah, it was close to that.
Yeah, and obviously 2020 we had the COVID and lockdown, and everything changed, didn't it?
How did you adapt during COVID times?
Well, we carried on doing the recordings, carried on doing the podcasts, and Inside the Ropes magazine launched that year, September. So yeah, I mean, it was weird, but I work alone and work from home, so it wasn't really that odd. I mean, I had an office back in the Power Slam days, but in 2016, I wasn't making as much money as I once was, so I had to make some changes. You cut your cloth, don't you? You have to adapt and economize when circumstances demand it. So that's what I had to do. So yeah, I was working from home, so I carried on doing things throughout. So it was obviously a very weird time for us all. I think it's going to take many, many years for us to recover from this. And there's people I've spoke to recently who still haven't really got back to normal. I think there's a lot of people out there who are still trying to readjust to life, and I think it was a really tough thing for everyone. So for all sorts of reasons. How about you? How do you cope with it? Were you what did you do? Did you work from home, or how did you get through it?
Well, no, I carried on working. My job is so it's a weird one, but I'll explain it to you after we hit the stop recording button. But no, I carried on working, and in the middle of that, we decided to start a wrestling podcast. So it was, I mean, I can't really complain too much because this came out of COVID, and we needed something to do.
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, I mean, you had to have a purpose, didn't you? You
Yeah.
just did, and if you didn't, you were just going to go crazy. So yeah, we all need a purpose in life, don't we? Otherwise, we're going to go. That's what we all need to keep ourselves on the straight and narrow. I always say we need a purpose. We need something to do.
Whose idea was it to make Inside the Ropes covers look almost exactly like Power Slams?
Well, the last few months I've been doing those covers.
Yes.
The reason they look like Power Slam is because I do them.
Yeah.
So,
that makes sense.
So, Inside the Ropes magazine, is obviously influenced by Power Slam. So, I guess it stands to reason that the covers would look a little bit like Power Slam as well. So, so that's that.
Do you go to the Inside the Ropes, like the big interview nights and stuff? Do you go on those trips, or?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not part of the crew, but I have been to some of those shows. I saw Goldberg in 2017, I think it was. And I saw Shawn Michaels possibly the next year, or maybe the year after that. I can't remember exactly which year that was. And Dustin Rhodes as well, really enjoyed that. I think they're the only 3 I've been to. He doesn't usually, because I live in Lancaster, and they were held in Manchester. No, I went to an Awesome Kong one as well. Really enjoyed that. And I ended up having to leave early because the last train home was like early, and she was so entertaining, and she was. It was a shame more people weren't there, but no, I'm not a part of the crew that helps out, but I have been to a few of the shows, and I've always really enjoyed them. I know Eric Bischoff is coming over. I think, is it next month? I think it's September.
Yes, he's coming to London, isn't he?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Yeah, see, London things are we're in Hertfordshire, so London trips are much easier than the Manchester,
of course,
Glasgow ones. Yeah,
of course, yeah, absolutely.
although we
Have
did
you
travel.
been to any of those shows?
I haven't. No. Like I said, like we've always talked about it. We've always like, shall we do it? Shall we go? And then for whatever reason, it's Glasgow. Oh, it's Manchester. It's a bit far. Like
that's yeah, absolutely. That's a long way from where you
saying
are.
that we did go to Cardiff for Clash at the Castle as well. So like maybe we shouldn't really complain about the length of a trip.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, he puts on a really good, really entertaining show. It's totally different to what I do when I'm doing an interview with someone.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's a stage show which is for the audience, and I think it works really well. So, Eric Bischoff is coming over, and I'm not sure who else he's got coming up. And if I did know, I wouldn't tell you.
Of course. Are you going to the Eric Bischoff show?
No, I'm not.
No.
No, I'm not. Because there isn't one near me. So, and I'd like to tell you more about that, but I'm probably best not mentioning that either. So
No,
I am hoping maybe to have a chat with Eric at some point. I can say that maybe.
Excellent. That was almost said like in a very Eric way. So
yeah,
that was good. What more can I say, Finn? I'm super grateful that you've given us your time tonight and had a hell of a chat. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me on. And it's always interesting to talk about lots of different things, and that whole click and AEW analogy or comparison never really occurred to me until I went off on my tangent and everything. So, but that's what I do, and that's what these podcasts are all about, going off on tangents. I always say
it happens a lot on our show, mainly from my co-host, but who's like sadly not with us tonight, but I'm sure he would love to chat to you. So maybe down the line we'll love to have you on again, and you can chat.
By all means, just let me know, and if there's a particular topic that you want to discuss, I'm up for it. So I'm absolutely up for it. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Thank you
for allowing me to plug Inside the Ropes. I appreciate that.
Inside the Ropes in stores now, because this show will be out on the Friday, so it will be out by then. So pick up your copy now from all good magazine stockists.
Indeed, and here it is again. It's got J on the front. Betrayal. I mean, what an amazing cover photo that is, isn't it? That's a stunning shot, isn't it? That
it takes me back, those covers, absolutely.
I mean, I'll tell you what, in all the years I did Power Slam, I never had a cover photo that good, I don't think. Maybe once or twice I did. I remember having a really good one at Goldberg. I think it was issue, could have been 107. That was a hell of a cover. I did have some really, really good covers, actually, but that one there is stunning. Just with the, him communicating, that the feelings of betrayal that his brother has just cost him the title, and he's just there, demoralized, what's happened, what do I do next? It's just all there, I might as well have been a director saying, give me more. This is your motivation, Jay. Give me more feeling. He might as well have been there, just directed him just off camera.
I mean, like as I believe it was the Vince McMahon puppet would say, really good shit.
Exactly. Very well put.
Finn, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate
I'm sure we'll do this again sometime.
Take care, my friend. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Finn Martin from Inside the Ropes, formerly of Power Slam. We can't thank him enough for joining us tonight and giving us a whole heap of things to talk about tomorrow. If you are still here and at the end of this, we thank you. We cannot appreciate you guys more for subscribing, liking, listening, watching, doing those things. If you haven't already done it, the like and subscribe on YouTube is there. if you are listening, give us a 5-star review. There's so many listening stations now to get us. I'm not the one that lists them, it's Chris. He is not with us, of course, tonight. So with that, I will say thank you to everyone that's still here. I am JB. The man usually sitting next to me, the best Chris in all of wrestling podcasts, will be back next week. What else can I say but take care, everyone. We'll see you soon.